Welcome to this, the first NetApp session of the day. My name is Julian Wheeler, and I am the Vendor Business Manager for NetApp here at Westcon-Comstor. I'm responsible for driving the NetApp business, our NetApp business, throughout New Zealand. Now, presenting this session, we have Henry Freiberg, the NetApp ANZ Cloud Business Manager, and Henry will be sharing with us how to migrate your core applications to the cloud, predominantly using some technology called Azure NetApp Files. Now, before we get started, I would like to just remind you of a couple of housekeeping rules. Number one, please do submit your questions using the Q&A session, and we will endeavor to answer them during the session. If there is time permitting at the end, then maybe we'll do some verbal Q&A at the end. Any questions we don't answer, we will get back to you after the event. Secondly, when this session ends in 20 minutes time, please remember to fill in the post-webinar survey. That way you will gain Imagine points, and we'll have you down as attendee and everything. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to thank you very much for attending, and I'm going to say over to you, Henry.
Thank you, Julian. It's great to be here. Good morning, New Zealand. Very excited to be here and to present on this today. And joining me, we've also got Cecilia Kuhn. And also a resource for you all is Sudev Kaur. So I look after the business holistically, but Cecilia is your local account manager. She's here in Sydney with me, but she's responsible for New Zealand. And the exciting news is that Microsoft Azure is building a new region in New Zealand. So this didn't come at a moment too late, because came just last week ahead of this presentation today. And so this makes it all a lot more relevant and a lot more real for you in New Zealand. We've had conversations with a handful of customers in New Zealand. Some of them have use cases that don't require super low latency, so they're willing to host their environments in Sydney or Melbourne. But with Microsoft now receiving the approval from the Overseas Investment Office to open a new Azure region in New Zealand itself, that's going to open up all sorts of new possibilities for us based on latency, based on data sovereignty, based on local presence. So we're pretty excited about that, and that should certainly accelerate the Azure business in New Zealand. And in turn, we expect that that will accelerate the need for Azure NetApp Files. So how did we come to be here? Why is NetApp talking about Microsoft? What happened is Microsoft, a little bit like AWS, grew their public cloud service on the back of object storage. So that's S3 in AWS or blob storage in Azure. But they don't have necessarily a very mature file offer. So what are they going to do for file systems? They've got managed disk that you can build a file system on. They've got Azure Files and Azure Premium Files, but they have a real focus on SMB and not on NFS to support Linux workloads. So Microsoft, a couple years ago now, looked at this situation and went through a build or buy type decision. And instead of building a new platform for themselves to do a high-end file system that supports NFS, they decided to buy it essentially from NetApp. So it's an OEM relationship where we are providing first-party service through Azure. And this was Microsoft's quickest, most effective way to solve this problem for them and to be able to capture more of the enterprise workloads that they want to move into Azure. And likewise, from NetApp's point of view, we see the migration to the cloud that our customers are going on. We want to facilitate that, so it's in our interest to make that easy for our customers. And partnering with Microsoft in this way was a good way to do that. So Azure NetApp Files, just a high level here. It's a storage platform as a service in Azure. Platform as a service, meaning you just have to choose how many terabytes, what speed, and where do you want it. That's it. And within 5 minutes, you can set up a file system. It's a first-party service sold and supported by Microsoft. So Cecilia, Sudev, and I, we are embedded into the Microsoft team, kind of with a contractor status, but our role is to sell and promote Azure NetApp Files as part of the Microsoft team. The solution is built on NetApp all-flash storage, the A700, 800 family, running our ONTAP software. So if you're an existing NetApp customer, it will have a familiar look and feel, but certainly more than half our customers are net new. So this is not something just for NetApp customers. This is something primarily for Azure customers. And if you happen to be a NetApp customer as well, that's just a bonus. So overall, ANF is faster and lower latency than Azure Premium Files. So if you've got a latency or high performance latency sensitive or high performance application, Azure Premium Files may not be fast enough for you. So we're talking about SAP, big Oracle databases, Windows Virtual Desktop. If Azure Premium Files not fast enough, ANF is the next logical alternative. You might want to build a file system on Azure Disk. That might be Azure UltraDisk, which is very fast, but UltraDisk is just a disk, a bare metal type solution. It's not a file system. And of course, we bring the cost-effective snapshot, backup, and many of the other tools that are inherent with ONTAP. Azure NetApp Files within Microsoft Azure is kind of the core of our solution, but we also have Global File Cache, which came from an acquisition of Talon. So this was going to be especially appropriate before if we had to extend a Sydney node out to New Zealand, and that might still be the case, but we're able to offer a caching solution out of the box as a default feature now with Azure NetApp Files. We've also got analytics tools built into it. That includes tools like Cloud Insights and ONTAP Cloud Manager, which gives you visibility not just to ANF, but to your entire cloud environment. We've got a virtual desktop service. This came from an acquisition of Cloud Jumper, and this makes it super easy for your end users to migrate from their home office to branch office to headquarters office and do it all very transparently. We've got cloud compliance tools, and I'll show you another slide on that. And we've got a cloud backup service coming soon as well. So with just simple configuration within the Azure portal, you'll be able to back up ANF into Azure Blob for a cost-effective and easy backup option without using third-party tools. Cloud compliance, this is what it looks like. This is one of the outputs, one of the dashboards that you can see. And what this is addressing is compliance. So if you've got a regulated industry of any kind, so government, schools, financial services, they often need to do a PCI report or similar, and we're able to do that out of the box. So again, without using a third-party service, you're able to produce a compliance report for audit purposes that will prove to the auditors that you don't have the wrong data in the wrong place. Meaning if you've got email addresses in a folder where there shouldn't be any email addresses or private information, tax file numbers or references to ethnicity and religion, all that sort of thing, based on metadata type analysis down to a file level, we're able to produce a report out of the box, and that's included in ANF. Here's a quick visual on the global file cache. This was the Talon acquisition. This is where we're pushing files to the edge using Windows File Server, Windows Server, at the edge. But more importantly is that we've got the file locking and application level controls in place to make this easy and controlled deployments. So this might be appropriate for situations where you've got branch office type data and you want to centralize it. You want to centralize the data, but still have a high performance experience at the edge. Or perhaps you've got centralized data already and your end users are upset that it's taking too long to download files, et cetera, et cetera. This would be an option in that situation, in reverse, to push those files to the edge and get a better end user or better application responsiveness. This shows how we price Azure NetApp files. It's priced per gig per month. There is no other traffic charge associated with this. Some of the other services from Azure or from AWS have traffic charges associated with their storage. We do not. There might be egress costs if you want to pull data out of those services, but there's no charge to bring data in, and there's no charge for reading or writing data to these volumes. So this should be pretty much the only charges that you see. If you have a situation where you might be doing a cross-region replication between Sydney and Melbourne, for example, then Microsoft will charge you for that long-haul transfer. But otherwise, within the VPC, there should be no charge at all. So we've got 15 cents per gig per month at the base level, and it goes up to 40 cents per gig per month at the ultra level. Then performance is calculated as a factor against the terabyte size. So you can see there that throughput at the standard level is just 16 megabits per second per terabyte. So if you have 2 terabyte volume, you get 32 megabits per second, and that scales not infinitely, but pretty high. Some quick highlights. We're able to scale up to 16 terabytes per file. So Azure files are limited to a 1 terabyte size. So what we're finding is that some use cases, especially in the university space and natural resources, sometimes they've got huge file sizes for image files and medical files, that sort of thing. So that's pushing traffic to ANF. We support NFS, as I mentioned, in addition to SMB. We've got high throughput, high ops, faster than alternatives. You can vary the performance. You can switch between standard, premium, and ultra with an API call. Or you can over-provision in order to get better performance. So that gives flexibility at time of deployment to pick the right service level for situations where it's difficult to predict what performance level you need. And it also gives flexibility, for example, with the database, at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, you might be running a big batch job. You can wind up the performance and you can wind it back down again, something that's impossible on many other services. Also handy for troubleshooting. If you're not sure where the bottleneck is, if you think it might be storage, yeah, wind it up for a few hours, wind it back down again, see if it makes any difference. Highly available. 4 nines of availability. That was improved just a couple months ago from 3 nines of availability. But 4 nines means that we're generally, most environments, this applies to most environments, that we're now greater availability than the underlying VMs. And so that's opened up simpler architectures, not needing to put in redundancy because the 4 nines is enough. And then we've got about 9 nines of durability. Data protection, we've got the instant, near instant snapshot and restore, application aware to be able to quiesce a database, take a snapshot, unquiesce the database, move on. All that is very mature technology. We've got the cloud backup service just around the corner. We've got cross-region replication, meaning between Sydney and Melbourne or other paired regions. Highly secure. It's not publicly addressable unless you want it to be. We can pin, we call it pinning, the VM to be physically proximate to ANF in the data center. So literally just a couple meters between these racks. So we're able to get latency down to 0.1 of a millisecond we've tested recently for some customers. So ultra low latency, which obviously drives higher throughput. Quick to deploy, as I mentioned, literally 5 minutes you can have it up and running. So that is bringing the vision of the cloud to enterprise file shares. And in contrast to doing a file share on managed disk. There's no OS patching, no upgrades, no third-party anything, no software to manage. So that's appealing to a lot of customers. And because it's a native Azure service, it's fully integrated into the Azure portal. So here's a quick comparison for you, Azure Premium Files versus ANF Premium. So Azure Premium Files has been around for years. ANF Premium, the newer service, this is the middle tier. So the storage per month, we're a little bit more expensive. We're $1,300 instead of $1,100 per month. But snapshots are included. So if you've got an application where you want to use snapshots, Azure Premium Files is going to be $2,100. ANF is going to be $1,300. ANF is going to give you guaranteed IOPS of 16,000 versus 4,000 on Azure Premium Files. They can burst to 12, but only for a limited period of time. We've got similar throughput, and we've got much lower latency. And then if that's not enough, we can step it up a notch higher to Ultra. And again, these IOPS and throughput figures are not absolute. These are calculated just for a 4 terabyte volume. 4 terabyte volume. If you had an 8 terabyte volume, these would be doubled. And this is all in US dollars. So not only do you get cost-effective solution with higher IOPS, lower throughput, you get the flexibility to switch between performance levels. You get the SLA-backed 4 nines availability, meaning financial penalties if we ever don't meet that. You got the NFS 3 and NFS 4 support. Easier Active Directory integration. Very, very easy to integrate with your on-prem Active Directory with ANF, and you get the larger file size. Some of the key workloads that we're targeting with this solution, I'm just noting the time here. We're running low, but these are our hero workloads, if you will. SAP, especially HANA, is a hot one for us. High performance compute, because of the low latency and high throughput we've got. Virtual desktop, be that Citrix or Windows Virtual Desktop, has been one of the most popular ones just recently. And then enterprise file shares, where you need NFS support. We're not the only. You can kludge together with software overlays solutions on the other platforms, but we're the easiest out of the box plug and play type file share solution to get NFS and to get that high performance. And then we bring the global file cache on top of that, plus the compliance, plus, becomes a compelling offer. And this is one of the reasons it's said to be Microsoft's fastest growing service. So when you find opportunities in these spaces, if you have opportunities or requirements in these spaces, please let us know. And we're happy to drill down on those specific use cases, talking about how and why it works so well. So Windows Virtual Desktop, here's a quick example. They were using Azure Premium Files, and they had 10-minute login times for their agents. So 10 minutes, you start losing people to the coffee machine. They come back from the coffee machine, it still hasn't booted up, they're gone. Whereas if you're able to log in within 8 seconds, you get the productivity back to work. That's a real business impacting difference. Bunch of the other use cases, databases, of course, but then we're seeing use cases that we never imagined people were going to be using this for. We've got architecture guides for many of these applications, so they're well documented, proven architectures. So thank you all for joining. Please remember to complete the survey. In the survey, there are some specific questions. We do have a whitelist process at the moment, so if you want to get on to ANF to test it out, we need to have your Azure ID. So through the survey, you can get in touch with us, and with your Azure ID, we'll whitelist you and you'll have access to the service. I'll look forward to reviewing the chat and getting back to any of you personally with some feedback or answers to your questions.
Many thanks, Henry. Cheers, everybody. Don't forget to fill in your survey. Thank you.